Joseph Duggar
is calling you from
Washington County Detention.
You've been here before? No, that's right.
If you have been following this case, really following it, then you know that the Duggar family has always possessed a singular, almost supernatural power. It isn't their religion, and it certainly isn't their reality television fame. Their true superpower has always been narrative, control. For over 20 years, they have used the soft glow of a camera lens to blur the edges of a reality that a courtroom is now exposing in high definition. But here is the ultimate self-own. They spent decades teaching the world to view their lives through a carefully curated screen. And on April 29th, an Arkansas judge is going to prove that the screen has finally shattered. In that courtroom, the family's greatest weapon, their ability to spin a story and manufacture a saintly image, is legally useless. You cannot use a filtered social media post to explain away a police report, and you cannot use a Bible verse to bypass a suppression hearing. This is where the family empire begins to eat itself alive. If this deep dive into the hidden legal battles of the Duggar family is keeping you on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Daniel Research right now to stay updated on every breaking development in this investigation. The irony of the April 29th hearing is that it represents the final collapse of the fortress Jim Bob Duggar spent a lifetime building. For years, the Duggars operated under the assumption that if they could control the media, they could control the truth. They built a legal and financial perimeter designed to keep the world out and their secrets in. But that fortress has officially turned into a cage for Joseph and Kendra Duggar. They are no longer the stars of a show, and they are defendants in a system that doesn't care about their brand or their heritage. The courtroom is a mechanical place, a venue of evidence and hard facts. And for a family that has lived in the realm of perception for so long, this transition is proving to be fatal. Insider reports suggest that the atmosphere behind the scenes at the big house is one of pure, unadulterated panic. They aren't just worried about a legal verdict, they are worried about the precedent this sets for the entire family line. Joseph Duggar is currently walking into a trap that he arguably set for himself. If you look closely at the legal filings leading up to this April 29th date, you see a man caught between two conflicting strategies. On one hand, Joseph is demanding a jury trial. To the public, that sounds like bravado. It sounds like the move of a man who believes 12 strangers will look at him and see the wholesome father they watched on TV for years. It's a move designed to project confidence, but simultaneously look at the behaviour of his legal team. His attorney keeps waiving his appearances. Joseph is avoiding the smaller preliminary hearings. He is staying out of the sight of the judge whenever possible. This creates a massive legal contradiction that the prosecution is already beginning to exploit. You cannot ask a jury of your peers to save you if you are too afraid to look a judge in the eye during the lead-up. By waiving these preliminaries, Joseph isn't just saving time, he's signalling a deep systemic fear. In the Arkansas legal system, and especially in cases involving family matters, that smell of fear is often interpreted as a silent admission of guilt. The trap is closing because his own legal strategy is eating itself from the inside out. Then we have the dilemma of Kendra. This is where the foundation of the marriage and the family brand truly begins to crack. Reports from those close to the situation claim that Kendra's defense strategy is starting to veer sharply away from Joseph's. She didn't just hire any lawyer, she hired Travis Story. For those who don't know the landscape, Story isn't a family chaplain or a fixer for the Duggars. He is a high-level legal operative. Kendra is now facing what legal experts call a double bind. If she stays perfectly loyal to Joseph and follows the family line of total silence and unity, she risks being dragged down by the weight of the evidence against him. She faces the very real possibility of losing her freedom because of his choices. However, if she separates her defense, which some insiders believe is already happening behind closed doors, she has to admit something devastating. To save herself, she has to testify or acknowledge in open court that the environment in their home was dangerous. She would have to admit that the umbrella of protection they preached about for years was actually a structure of neglect or worse. There is no middle ground here. On April 29th, the body language at the defense table will tell the entire story. If her attorney moves to sever the cases, it means the marriage is legally over, regardless of whether they are still living under the same roof. To save the person, she has to destroy the myth, and for a Duggar, the myth is everything. The stakes here are escalating far beyond just a few nights in a county jail. We are talking about the total dissolution of the Duggar professional and financial brand. Many people are dismissing these Arkansas charges as minor misdemeanors, but that is a massive oversight. Money does not like jail time, and it certainly does not like child endangerment charges. The Duggar estate, which includes a massive portfolio of rental properties, car lots, and lingering TLC residuals, survives on the illusion of wholesome integrity. The moment Joseph is linked to a conviction involving the safety of children, the financial dominoes start to fall. Insurance companies will revoke policies on their commercial properties. Property management deals will be scrutinised. The family values brand becomes a liability for anyone doing business with them. Even more concerning for the family is the looming shadow of the Florida felonies. April 29th is effectively the foreclosure notice on their reputation. If the judge in Arkansas decides to tighten Joseph's bond conditions, or as some speculate, forces him into a supervised release program with an ankle monitor, the brand dies of suffocation. You cannot sell a lifestyle of freedom and faith when the patriarch's son is geofenced to a barn by a court order. But let's get into the most chilling aspect of this case, the evidence that no amount of PR can spin. We have to talk about the exterior door locks. This isn't just a rumour circulating on message boards, it's a concrete detail from the investigative files. Sources claim that investigators found modified locks installed on the outside of bedroom doors in the home where the children were kept. In the world of child safety, there is no innocent explanation for a deadbolt that locks a child inside a room from the hallway. You don't do that for safety during a fire. You don't do that to prevent roughhousing. You do that for one reason: captivity. This is the knockout blow because hardware is silent and undeniable. A lawyer can try to argue about a person's intent or their religious upbringing, but a metal lock installed backward is a physical manifestation of intent. It is the silent witness that Joseph cannot cross-examine. When the judge reviews the evidence log on April 29th, that lock is going to speak louder than any character witness the Duggars could bring forward. It transforms the case from a misunderstanding into a documented instance of what the law calls unlawful restraint. This leads us to the behavioural flaw that has plagued the Duggars for years, a lethal combination of arrogance and naivety. If you look at the leaked reports concerning Joseph's communications while this case has been pending, a disturbing pattern emerges. He doesn't seem focused on the well-being or the psychological recovery of the family unit. Instead, he seems obsessed with managing the team. He has been heard warning Kendra about which lawyers to trust and how to handle the family's public image. He is treating a criminal investigation like a PR crisis. This is the fundamental mistake. A judge is not a fan who can be swayed by a well-timed smile or a scripted apology. A judge is an accountant of facts. Joseph seems to believe he can negotiate his way out of this like he's on a used car lot, but the legal system is about to teach him that his family name carries no currency in a court of record. His arrogance has set a price he can't afford to pay. And then there is the question of Jim Bob's role in all of this. His absence or presence on April 29th will be a masterclass in failed emotional appeals. For the first time in his life, the patriarch is in a lose-lose situation. If Jim Bob shows up and sits in that gallery, he looks like a mob boss, overseeing his territory, potentially intimidating Kendra and her legal team. If he stays away, he looks like a coward who has abandoned his son the moment things got difficult. In a normal family, a father's presence is a sign of support. In the Duggar family, especially after the fallout of the Josh trial, his presence is a radioactive liability. Insiders suggest that Jim Bob is terrified that if he gets too close to the proceedings, the prosecution will find a way to subpoena his own records or pull him into the line of fire. His silence isn't a sign of dignity, it's a desperate attempt at self-preservation. He is trying to appeal to the court's sympathy by hiding, but judges are notoriously offended by those who think they are above the process. The core of this entire drama is the thematic hypocrisy that has finally been laid bare. The Duggars built a global platform on the promise of protecting children. It was the cornerstone of their entire existence. Yet the charges in Arkansas, child endangerment and false imprisonment, are the exact opposite of that promise. You cannot claim to be a shield for the innocent while simultaneously being the one they need protection from. The umbrella of authority that they preached about from every pulpit is now being legally redefined as a tool for confinement. On April 29th, the prosecution doesn't even need to prove the Duggars are evil in a moral sense. They just have to prove they are hypocrites in a legal sense. The door locks and the documented conditions in that home do that work for them. The isolation is what will ultimately break Joseph. Think about the walk from the car to the courthouse door. In the past, the Duggars moved in a phalanx, a wall of family members, lawyers and supporters. But on April 29th, that wall is expected to be missing. If Joseph and Kendra arrive in separate vehicles, or if they don't walk in together, it is a signal to the world that the deal is done and Kendra has flipped. This is the moment of truth. The isolation won't hit Joseph when the charges are read. It will hit him when he looks over at Kendra's table and realizes that her lawyer is no longer coordinating with his. He will see a woman who has realized that her survival depends on his downfall. For the first time in his life, Joseph will be standing alone, realizing that the family loyalty he was taught to value above all else doesn't mean a thing when a 15-year prison sentence is on the table. April 29th is the pivot point. It is the day the ability to settle this quietly and keep it in the family officially dies. Once the judge makes a ruling on the validity of the search warrants and the evidence of the door locks is admitted, the case is on rails, there is no more room for forgiveness or working it out through the church. The family can no longer ask for grace. They can only defend the facts, and as we have seen, the facts are not on their side. This isn't just a hearing, it's a surgery where the rot of the Duggar empire is being cut out for the whole world to see. There is no going back from what is about to be revealed. The family cannot hide behind the screen anymore. The courtroom is waiting and the truth is finally taking the stand. Next, we are going to dive deep into the specific documents that reveal exactly what was said during those initial police interviews, and the details are even more disturbing than anyone imagined. When the first officers arrived at the scene, they weren't expecting to find a high-stakes criminal conspiracy. They were responding to what appeared to be a routine welfare check, but the moment they stepped across the threshold of the property, the atmosphere changed. Reports from those early moments of the investigation suggest that Joseph Duggar didn't greet the authorities with the panic of a concerned father. Instead, he greeted them with the practiced, eerie calm of a man who has spent his entire life being watched by millions. He was polite, he was soft-spoken, and he was remarkably evasive. According to insider reports, Joseph attempted to frame the modifications in the home as safety measures common in large religious households. He spoke about the need for order and the challenges of managing a growing family. But the officers weren't looking at the family's reputation. They were looking at the hardware. They were looking at the way the light hit those exterior locks and the way the rooms were stripped of the typical comforts of a child's bedroom. The initial police interviews, which are now becoming a central part of the prosecution's case for the April 29th hearing, reveal a devastating disconnect. While Joseph was talking about protection, the evidence was screaming confinement. It's been said that Kendra's initial reaction was far more visceral. Sources claim that while Joseph was playing the role of the calm patriarch, Kendra appeared increasingly fractured. The pressure of maintaining the Duggar narrative while staring at a badge is a weight few people can carry. During those first interviews, there was a moment where the tone shifted. The investigators stopped asking about the house rules and started asking about the missing hours. They wanted to know why certain areas of the home were off limits and why the children's movements were so strictly monitored. It's reported that this is when the first real cracks in the unified front appeared. Kendra's silence in those moments was louder than any confession. She wasn't defending the locks. She was looking at them as if seeing them for the first time through the eyes of the law. This shift in the interview room is exactly why the April 29th hearing is so dangerous for the family. The prosecution isn't just bringing the locks into the courtroom, they are bringing the transcript of those first panicked hours where the Duggars realised their fame couldn't stop a search warrant. But the Arkansas charges are only the tip of the iceberg. The real shadow looming over this entire family is the Florida connection. For months, rumours have swirled about a secondary investigation in the Sunshine State involving even more serious allegations. Exclusive theories suggest that the Arkansas child endangerment case is being used as a legal test run for the Florida felonies. In the legal world, prosecutors often look for a pattern of behaviour. If the state of Arkansas can prove that Joseph and Kendra created an environment of unlawful restraint, it provides a massive amount of momentum for the Florida investigators to move forward with their own charges. We are talking about a potential multi-state legal collapse. The Florida charges are rumoured to involve financial irregularities tied to real estate holdings and deeper, more disturbing allegations regarding the treatment of minors under their care. April 29th isn't just about what happened in one house in Tontitown, it's about whether the Duggar Way is legally classified as a criminal enterprise across state lines. If the Arkansas judge rules that the evidence of the door locks is admissible, the Florida prosecutors will have the probable cause. They need to blow the doors off their own investigation. When a family member is charged with child endangerment, the corporate veil becomes incredibly thin. There are reports that the IRS and state tax authorities are already looking at the Duggar real estate empire with renewed interest. Why? Because the money used to maintain these properties is often intermingled with the family's personal expenses. If Joseph is convicted, every property he has touched, every rental agreement he has signed, and every LLC he is listed on becomes a target for discovery. The financial stakes are astronomical. We aren't just talking about a few $1,000s in fines. We are talking about the potential seizure of assets and the total dissolution of the trusts that were meant to provide for the next generation. The Duggar empire was built on land and reputation. The reputation is gone, and on April 29th, the land might be next. Inside the Tontitown compound, the atmosphere is described as a war room mentality. Bob is reportedly obsessing over the legal manoeuvres, specifically the motion to suppress the evidence from the search warrant. This is their last-ditch effort to keep the truth from reaching a jury. If they can convince the judge that the search was performed illegally or that the warrant was overly broad, the knockout blow evidence, the locks, the photos of the rooms, the digital forensics disappears. It's a high-stakes gamble. But here is the problem with that strategy. The prosecution has been incredibly meticulous. They didn't just kick in the door, they built a case brick by brick before they ever stepped on the property. Insider reports suggest the state has witnesses that the Duggars haven't even considered, former employees, distant relatives, and even neighbours who saw things they weren't supposed to see. The suppression hearing on April 29th isn't just a legal formality, it's a battle for the very existence of the family's secrets. And then there is the human cost, the children. While the world watches the legal drama, the state of Arkansas is alleging a reality that is far darker than anything seen on reality TV. The prosecution's filings hint at an environment where discipline was indistinguishable from harm. They describe rooms that weren't just bedrooms, but holding cells. They describe a level of surveillance that would be extreme in a maximum security prison, let alone a family home. The most heart-wrenching part of the upcoming hearing will be the presentation of the children's living conditions. Even if the Duggars win on a legal technicality, the moral verdict has already been delivered. You cannot unsee the images of those exterior locks. You cannot unhear the testimony of investigators who described the hollow look in the eyes of those inside. The tragedy of the Duggar family is that they became so obsessed with the image of a perfect home that they turned the home itself into a prison. As we approach the April 29th date, the tension between the Duggars and Kendra's family, the Caldwells, is reaching a breaking point. Reports suggest that Paul Caldwell is no longer interested in protecting Jim Bob's interests. There are rumours of a massive rift, with the Caldwells encouraging Kendra to tell the truth and save herself. This is the nightmare scenario for the Duggars. If Kendra flips, she doesn't just testify against Joseph, she provides a roadmap to the entire family's inner workings. She knows where the documents are hidden. She knows who gave the orders. She knows the truth about the Florida property deals. The isolation Joseph is feeling is real, and it's being fueled by a father-in-law who has realized that the Duggar ship is sinking and he doesn't want his daughter to go down with it. The walk to the courthouse on April 29th won't just be a legal appearance, it will be a public declaration of which side everyone has chosen. The legal maneuvers leading up to this hearing have been a masterclass in desperation. Joseph's team has filed dozens of motions attempting to delay, distract and discredit. But the judge in this case is known for being no nonsense. He isn't interested in the family's TV history or their political connections. He is interested in the safety of children under the jurisdiction of his court. The strategy of waiving appearances and trying to hide behind a high-priced legal team is starting to backfire. The court sees it as a lack of accountability. Every time Joseph fails to show up to a preliminary hearing, the judge's patience thins. By the time April 29th arrives, the bench will be looking for answers, not excuses. The Duggars are used to being the ones who set the rules, but in that courtroom, they are just another file on a crowded docket. Their special status has evaporated, replaced by the cold, hard reality of the Arkansas Penal Code. One of the most shocking elements being discussed in legal circles is the digital footprint found on devices seized during the raid. While the door locks are the physical evidence, the digital evidence is what provides the motive. Rumours suggest that investigators found a series of communications between Joseph and other family members that discuss the management of the children in terms that are chillingly clinical. These weren't parents talking about a difficult day. These were operators discussing a system of control. If these communications are admitted as evidence, they will destroy the defence's claim that the environment was normal or traditional. It shows a level of premeditation that moves the case into a much more serious category of criminal intent. The prosecution is reportedly sitting on a mountain of data that links the Arkansas house to the broader Duggar network, suggesting that the system wasn't just Joseph's idea, but a family-wide protocol. As we prepare for the second half of this investigation, the question isn't whether the Duggars will be exposed. They already have been. The question is how much of the empire they can save before the final gavel falls. The April 29th hearing is the first real look at the evidence that will define the rest of their lives. We are about to move into the specific allegations regarding the Florida property deals and the insider witness who is rumoured to be ready to break the case wide open. The connections between the Arkansas misdemeanors and the Florida felonies are becoming clearer by the day, and the picture they paint is one of a family that thought they were above the law, only to realise the law has a very long memory. Stay tuned as we dive into the third and final part of this deep dive, where we reveal the point of no return for the Duggar empire and the one person who holds the key to their final destruction. The deepest fear for Jim Bob and the Duggar hierarchy isn't just the testimony of a disgruntled former employee or a distant relative. It is the emergence of what insiders are calling the ghost in the machine. This refers to a series of encrypted communications and private journals that were reportedly recovered during the digital sweep of the Arkansas home. While the family spent years presenting a front of harmonious faith-based living, these records allegedly paint a picture of a calculated, almost corporate approach to the confinement of family members. Rumours suggest that the prosecution has uncovered a manual of discipline that goes far beyond any traditional religious upbringing. This isn't just about a few locks on doors, it is about a documented system of behavioural modification that the state argues crosses the line into criminal abuse. On April 29th, the argument over whether this evidence is admissible will determine if the Duggar name is synonymous with faith or with a sophisticated system of control. This leads us directly into the heart of the Florida connection, which is the ticking time bomb the Duggars are trying to ignore. While the Arkansas charges focus on the immediate physical safety of the children, the Florida investigation is rumoured to be digging into the why behind the Duggar real estate empire. For years, the family has purchased properties through a labyrinth of shell companies, often using family members as figureheads. Exclusive theories suggest that some of these properties were used as off-grid locations where the family's strict rules could be enforced away from the prying eyes of the Arkansas community. Investigators are reportedly looking into whether the financial resources of the family were used to facilitate the transport of minors across state lines for the purpose of these disciplinary retreats. If the Arkansas hearing on April 29th confirms the existence of the confinement hardware, it gives Florida prosecutors the jurisdictional hook they need to classify the entire Duggar operation as a multi-state criminal enterprise. The stakes are no longer just a misdemeanor, they are the total forfeiture of the family's assets under racketeering laws. But perhaps the most devastating blow to the family's survival is the collapse of the Caldwell alliance. For years, the relationship between Jim Bob Duggar and Paul Caldwell was the bedrock of their social and religious circle. But as the legal pressure on Joseph and Kendra has intensified, that bedrock has turned to sand. Reports from inside the circle suggest that Paul Caldwell has reached his limit. He is reportedly terrified that his own reputation and ministry will be incinerated in the Duggars' legal bonfire. There is a growing consensus among legal analysts that a cooperation agreement is being negotiated behind the scenes. If Kendra, under the guidance of her father and her attorney Travis Story, decides to provide the roadmap to the family's secrets, the game is over. She wouldn't just be testifying about the locks, she would be the one to explain the hierarchy, the funding, and the orders that came from the top. The isolation. Joseph feels at that defense table on April 29th will be the physical manifestation of a family that has finally turned on its own to save the brand. This brings us to the ultimate behavioural flaw, the family's belief that they are smarter than the system. Jim Bob has spent decades navigating the complexities of local politics and media cycles, and he seems to believe that the judicial system can be managed in the same way. But a courtroom is a vacuum where perception is secondary to proof. The arrogant naivety that Joseph has displayed, waiving appearances while demanding a jury, is a strategy born out of a bubble that has finally burst. They are used to being the ones who define the truth for their audience. In the Arkansas courtroom, the truth is defined by the prosecution's evidence bags and the judge's interpretation of the law. The moment the judge rules on the search warrant, the Duggars lose their ability to negotiate. They will be forced to stand in the light of facts they cannot edit or delete. As we look toward the conclusion of this legal saga, we have to recognise that April 29th is not the end of the story, but the beginning of the final chapter. It is the surgery that removes the ability to hide. Once the evidence is out, the family cannot ask for the public's forgiveness because the public will finally see what was happening behind the umbrella of protection. The thematic hypocrisy is total. The very people who claim to be the ultimate guardians of childhood innocence are the ones facing charges of endangering it. The unlawful restraint alleged by the state is the legal term for what the Duggars called family values. This disconnect is too wide to bridge. The brand is dead, the finances are under siege, and the family unit is fracturing under the weight of its own secrets. The point of no return has been reached. When that gavel bangs on April 29th, the sound will echo far beyond the walls of the Arkansas courthouse. It will signal the end of a 20-year experiment in reality television and religious branding. Joseph and Kendra are the ones in the crosshairs, but the entire Duggar empire is on trial. Whether it's Kendra flipping to save herself, the admission of the exterior door locks, or the looming shadow of the Florida felonies, the outcome is the same. The truth is no longer under their control. The story they spent a lifetime telling is being rewritten by the state, and the new version is a tragedy of their own making. If you want to stay ahead of the curve and get the raw, unvarnished truth about the April 29th, hearing the moment it breaks, you need to be part of the Daniel research community. This investigation is far from over, and we are tracking every motion, every witness, and every secret the Duggars are trying to bury. Don't rely on the sanitized headlines of the mainstream media. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on all notifications right now. Comment below with your predictions. Do you think Kendra will flip, or will the door locks be the evidence that ends it all? Use the hashtag DuggarJustice to join the conversation. I will see you in the courtroom for the next update. This is Daniel Research signing off.